My daughter-in-law poisoned my food, but she ended up eating her own wickedness. I've lived long enough to know that evil doesn't always announce itself with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it tiptoes into your home wearing a smile, shaking your hand, calling you mother. And sometimes, it stands in your kitchen at dawn, pouring something dark into the food meant for your mouth. I saw it happen. I saw her do it. And in that moment, as the morning light fell through the window like a judgment from heaven, I understood something terrible. The woman my son loved had decided I needed to die. But what she didn't know, what evil never knows, is that wickedness has a way of circling back, hungry and blind, ready to devour the hands that fed it. Welcome, my dear. This is Grandma Alice Stories, where every tale carries a lesson and every wound carries wisdom. Sit close, pour yourself some tea and settle in, because this story isn't just about poison in a cup. It's about the poison we carry in our hearts, the kind that spreads silently until it destroys everything we touch. Listen carefully, child. Life has its own way of settling scores. I never imagined my last years would be spent like this, living under my own son's roof yet feeling like a stranger in every room. But that's what happens when you outlive your usefulness, I suppose. When your hands grow slow, your back bends a little lower, and the world decides you're a burden instead of a blessing. My name is Alice. I'm 73 years old, and for the past 2 years, I've lived with my son Daniel and his wife Rebecca in a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when I had my own little home. Nothing grand, just a 2-room cottage with a garden where I grew tomatoes and marigolds. I was happy there, independent. But then the arthritis came, creeping into my knees and fingers like winter frost, and the bills started piling up faster than my pension could cover them. Daniel insisted I move in. "Ma, you're not a burden," he said, his eyes warm and honest. "You're my mother. This is your home now." I believed him. God forgive me, I believed him. But Daniel worked long hours at the factory, gone before sunrise and home after dark. That left me alone with her, Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, a woman I tried so hard to love, to understand, to win over. But from the very first day, I felt the coldness radiating from her like frost on glass. She never said it outright, but I could see it in the tightness of her smile, the way her eyes slid past me as if I were furniture. I was an inconvenience, an interruption in the life she'd built with my son. Still, I tried. I cooked their meals, washed their dishes, kept the house tidy even when my joints screamed in protest. I stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed out of her way. I thought if I made myself useful enough, humble enough, maybe she'd soften. Maybe she'd see me as family instead of a ghost haunting her hallway. But kindness, I learned, is wasted on a heart that's already made its choice. Started small. Little cruelties that could almost be mistaken for accidents. She'd serve dinner and forget to set a plate for me. She'd do laundry and leave my clothes damp in the basket, mildewing and sour. Once, I found my reading glasses snapped in half, left on the bathroom counter like broken wings. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice flat as old bread. "I must have knocked them off by mistake." Daniel never saw it. How could he? He loved her. And love, my dear, can be the blindest thing in the world. But I saw the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. Her eyes cold and calculating, like someone measuring a problem they intended to solve. I saw the way she flinched when Daniel showed me affection, as if my presence stole something that belonged to her. And I saw the bills piling up on the kitchen counter, the credit card statements with her name on them, the shopping bags she hid in the closet. Rebecca had expensive tastes and a spending problem. And I, poor, slow, dependent me, was a drain on the resources she wanted for herself. I should have said something. I should have warned Daniel. But how do you tell a man that the woman sleeping beside him every night might be capable of something dark? How do you break a son's heart with suspicions that sound like the paranoid whispers of a jealous old woman? So I stayed quiet, and I prayed. I prayed that I was wrong about her. I prayed that love would soften whatever hardness lived in her chest. But God, in His wisdom, doesn't always answer prayers the way we want. That morning, the morning it happened, I woke before dawn, same as always. My body aches too much for long sleep anymore, so I rise early and shuffle to the kitchen to start breakfast. It's the one thing I can still do well, the one way I can still contribute. I set the kettle on for tea, cracked eggs into a bowl, and sliced bread for toast. The house was silent except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the soft whistle of the kettle beginning to warm. I didn't hear her come in. Rebecca moved like smoke, soundless and sudden. I was at the counter, whisking eggs, when I felt the air shift behind me. I glanced up at the window above the sink, and there, in the reflection, I saw her. She stood near the table, her back to me, her hand moving quickly over the plate I just set out for myself. My plate, the one with the small chip on the rim that I always used. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. My eyes aren't what they used to be, and the morning light plays tricks. But then she pulled her hand back, slipping something small and dark into the pocket of her robe. A bottle, a vial, something that didn't belong in a kitchen at breakfast time. My heart stopped. She turned and saw me watching. Our eyes met in the reflection, and for one terrible second, the mask slipped. I saw no guilt in her face, no shame, just cold, hard calculation and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of relief that it would soon be over. "Good morning, Mother," she said sweetly, her voice like honey poured over gravel. "I was just setting the table for you. You work so hard in the mornings." I said nothing. My tongue had turned to stone. I turned back to the stove, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the whisk. Behind me, I heard her footsteps retreat down the hallway, light and unhurried, as if she'd just done something as ordinary as folding laundry. I stood there, staring at that plate. My plate. The eggs still sizzled in the pan, the bread sat waiting in the toaster, and the tea kettle began to scream. A high, sharp sound that felt like it was coming from inside my own chest. She had poisoned my food. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, the mother of my grandchildren, had just tried to kill me. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen between the stove and the table, my mind spinning like a leaf caught in a storm. Part of me wanted to scream, to run to Daniel's room and shake him awake, to show him what kind of woman he'd married. But another part of me, older, quieter, wiser, knew that wouldn't work. She'd deny it. She'd cry. She'd make me look like a paranoid old fool. And Daniel would believe her because he loved her. Because he had to. No, if I was going to survive this, I had to be smarter. I had to wait. I had to watch. So I took a deep breath, steadied my shaking hands, and finished making breakfast. I set the poison plate on the table exactly where she'd left it. And then I sat down in the living room, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest, and I waited to see what evil would do next, because I'd learned something in my 73 years on this earth. Wickedness always makes they say the guilty sleep soundly because they've made peace with their sins. But I knew better. I'd seen the tremor in Rebecca's hands as she walked away from that poisoned plate. I'd heard the careful lightness of her footsteps, like someone dancing on the edge of a cliff. Evil doesn't sleep soundly. It lies awake, waiting, watching for the moment its victim finally falls. And that morning, as I sat in the living room with my heart hammering against my ribs, I realized something that both terrified and steadied me. I wasn't going to be her victim. Not today. Not ever. Because God has a funny way of redirecting arrows. And sometimes the poison meant for your lips ends up in the mouth of the one who brewed it. I sat in that old armchair by the window, the one with the faded yellow cushion that Daniel bought me when I first moved in. My hands gripped the armrests so tightly my knuckles turned white. Through the doorway I could see into the kitchen. See that plate sitting innocently on the table, the eggs I'd scrambled now cold and congealing, the toast growing stiff. Death dressed up as breakfast. My mind raced through a dozen scenarios. I could throw the food away, pretend I'd already eaten. But then what? She'd try again. Tomorrow, the next day, the day after that. A woman who'd crossed that line once wouldn't hesitate to cross it again. I could confront her directly, but without proof, it would be my word against hers. And in this house, her word carried the weight of my son's love. No, I needed to be patient. I needed to wait for her to reveal herself. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 6:30. 7. The house began to stir with the sounds of morning. The shower running upstairs. Daniel's heavy footsteps moving across the bedroom floor. Any moment now, he'd come down for breakfast before heading to the factory. And Rebecca would expect to find me slumped over that table, or collapsed on the kitchen floor, or perhaps just peacefully passed away in my sleep. She'd probably already rehearsed her tears. I heard her voice upstairs, calling out to Daniel. "Honey, don't forget your lunch. I packed it last night." Her tone was bright, cheerful. The voice of a devoted wife starting another ordinary day. The normalcy of it made my stomach turn. Then I heard something that changed everything. "Ma!" Daniel's voice called down from the top of the stairs. "Ma, you up? I'm running late. Can you put some coffee on for me?" I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could speak, Rebecca's voice cut in, sharp and quick. "She's probably still sleeping, honey. You know how tired she's been lately. I'll get your coffee. She's been tired lately." The words hit me like a slap. She was already building the narrative, already preparing everyone for my sudden, unfortunate death. Oh, she'd been so tired recently, so weak. I guess her heart just gave out. My jaw clenched. I stood up from the chair, my legs shaky but determined, and I walked to the bottom of the stairs. "I'm awake, son," I called up, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'll get your coffee." There was a pause. Then Rebecca appeared at the top of the stairs, her face a careful mask of surprise. "Oh, Mother, you startled me. I thought you were resting." "I rest plenty," I said evenly, holding her gaze. "I'm not dead yet." Something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or calculation. She came down the stairs in her silk robe, her hair perfectly arranged, her smile perfectly practiced. "Well, aren't you energetic this morning?" she said. "That's wonderful. Why don't you sit down and have your breakfast? I made sure everything was ready for you." "How thoughtful," I replied, my voice as sweet as hers was false. Daniel came bounding down the stairs, already dressed in his factory uniform. His face rushed and distracted. He was a good man, my son, honest, hardworking, devoted. But like most good men, he couldn't see the snake in his garden because he was too busy tending the flowers. "Morning, Ma," he said, kissing my cheek as he passed. "Sorry I can't stay. We've got a big shipment coming in and they need all hands on deck." He grabbed his thermos from the counter, and that's when he saw the table. "Oh, breakfast is ready. Perfect." My heart lurched. He was moving toward my plate. "Daniel, that's—" I started, but Rebecca was faster. "That's your mother's plate, honey," she said smoothly. "I'll fix yours in just a second. You know how she likes everything just so." She shot me a look that was pure venom wrapped in velvet. Daniel laughed. "Ma and her routines. Never changes." He ruffled my hair affectionately, like I was still the young mother who'd raised him, and not the old woman someone wanted dead. Rebecca moved to the stove, cracking new eggs into the pan with brisk efficiency. I watched her hands, steady now, confident. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd sit down and eat that poisoned food like an obedient old fool, and by the time Daniel came home tonight, I'd be gone. But I didn't sit down. I stood there, thinking fast, praying faster. "Actually," I said suddenly, pressing a hand to my stomach, "I'm not feeling well. My stomach's been upset since I woke up. I think I'll skip breakfast this morning." Rebecca's hand froze over the pan. "Oh," she said, her voice tight. That's too bad. You really should eat something, Mother. You need your strength." I'll be fine, I said. Maybe just some tea later. Daniel looked concerned. You okay, Ma? You want me to stay home? No, no, I said quickly. You go on. It's probably just a bit of indigestion. I'll rest. He nodded, though worry creased his brow. Rebecca slid his fresh eggs onto a clean plate. A clean plate, I noticed, and handed it to him with a kiss on the cheek. Eat fast, honey. You don't want to be late. What happened next, I didn't plan. I don't think anyone could have planned it. Sometimes God writes the ending himself, and all we can do is watch his hand move across the page. Daniel sat down at the table, his eyes already on his phone, scrolling through work messages. He set his plate down, and then, distracted, he reached over and grabbed the fork from my plate. The poisoned one. My breath caught. Daniel! But he'd already scooped up a forkful of those cold, deadly eggs. Daniel, N.O. Rebecca's scream tore through the kitchen like a siren. She lunged across the room, her face twisted with panic, and slapped the fork out of his hand. It clattered to the floor, eggs scattering across the tile. The room went silent. Daniel stared at her, shocked. Rebecca, what the hell? Don't eat that! She gasped, her chest heaving. Don't! You can't! Her eyes were wild, darting between the spilled food and my face. She'd given herself away. In that one moment of panic, she'd revealed everything. Daniel stood up slowly. Why can't I eat it? His voice was low, dangerous in a way I'd never heard before. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. It's her plate. And she said she wasn't feeling well, so I thought maybe what? Daniel's eyes were hardening, realization dawning like a cold sunrise. Maybe the food was bad? Maybe it would make me sick. He looked down at the eggs on the floor, then at the plate on the table, then at his wife. What did you do, Rebecca? Nothing. She was shaking now, tears forming, but they looked more like fear than remorse. I didn't do anything. I was just worried. Worried about what? His voice rose. Why would you scream like that if there was nothing wrong with the food? I stood frozen, watching my son's world crack open. Part of me wanted to speak, to explain, to somehow soften the blow. But another part of me, the part that had been silent for too long, knew he needed to see this for himself. Rebecca's face crumpled. She looked at me with pure hatred now, the mask completely shattered. She's turning you against me, she hissed. That old woman has been poisoning your mind since the day she moved in. She wants you all to herself. Answer the question, Daniel said coldly. What's wrong with that food? The silence that followed was like the moment before thunder. Thick, electric, unbearable. Rebecca's eyes darted to the door, calculating her escape. Daniel stood like a statue, his jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. And I simply watched, my heart breaking for my son, even as relief flooded through my veins. Because I knew what came next wouldn't be easy. The truth never is. But it was coming, inevitable as dawn, and there would be no stopping it now. Rebecca had planted her wickedness, watered it with lies, and watched it grow in the darkness. But now the sun had risen, and her harvest was about to begin. There's a moment when evil realizes it's been caught, when the mask slips and there's nothing left but the raw, desperate face underneath. I'd seen that moment in Rebecca's eyes as she stood in our kitchen, trapped between her lies and the truth she could no longer hide. My son, the man she'd sworn to love and honor, was looking at her like she was a stranger. And perhaps that's what she'd always been. A stranger wearing the costume of a wife, playing the role of a daughter-in-law, all while plotting murder in the margins of our daily life. But evil, for all its cunning, always forgets one simple truth. You cannot dance with darkness without eventually stumbling into the light. And that morning, the light was blinding. I'm waiting, Daniel said, his voice like stone scraping against stone. Tell me what's in that food. Rebecca's face had gone pale, But her eyes. Oh, her eyes were still calculating, still searching for an escape route. I'd seen that look before on cornered animals, the kind that would chew off their own leg to get free of a trap. "You're being ridiculous," she said, forcing a laugh that came out brittle and broken. "I just didn't want you eating cold eggs, that's all. You know how your stomach is in the mornings." "My stomach is fine," Daniel cut her off. "And those eggs weren't cold when you screamed. They came right off the stove." He took a step toward her. "So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want the truth. What did you do?" I saw her body tense, saw the moment she made her decision. Instead of confessing, she pivoted, a predator changing tactics mid-hunt. She pointed at me, her finger trembling with manufactured emotion. "Ask her," she cried. "Ask your precious mother what she's been doing. She's the one who's been making everyone miserable in this house. She's the one who watches me like I'm some kind of criminal, who undermines everything I do, who you tried to poison," I said quietly. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. The ripples spread outward, touching everything, changing everything. Rebecca's mouth snapped shut. Daniel turned to look at me, his face a landscape of confusion and dawning horror. "Ma," he said slowly, "what are you talking about?" I took a breath that felt like it came from the bottom of a well. "This morning, before dawn, I was in the kitchen making breakfast. Rebecca came in. I saw her, in the window's reflection, pour something into my plate, into my food. My voice was steady now, strengthened by truth. That plate right there, the one you almost ate from. She's lying." Rebecca's voice went shrill. "She's a bitter old woman who can't stand seeing her son happy. She's been trying to break us up since day one." "Then let's test it," Daniel said. We both looked at him. "What?" Rebecca whispered. "The food," Daniel said, his face hard as granite. "If there's nothing wrong with it, then you should have no problem eating it yourself." The room went silent except for the ticking of that old clock on the wall. Tick, 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 each second falling like a gavel. Rebecca laughed again, but this time it was the sound of something breaking. "That's insane. I'm not going to eat it." Daniel picked up the plate and held it out to her. "Right now. If Ma's lying, if I'm being paranoid, if this is all just some misunderstanding, then prove it. Eat your mother-in-law's breakfast." She stared at the plate like it was a coiled snake. Her hands came up, then dropped. Her mouth opened, then closed. And in that moment of hesitation, she confessed to everything without saying a single word. "I can't," she finally whispered. "Why not?" Daniel's voice cracked like a whip. "Because..." Her voice broke. Tears started streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of a plan that had fallen apart. "Because she's ruined everything. Your mother has ruined everything." The words exploded out of her like poison finally purging from a wound. "We were fine before she moved in. We had money, we had space, we had a life. And then she came with her medical bills and her constant needs and her judgmental looks, taking and taking and taking. So you decided to kill her?" Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through her tirade like a blade. Rebecca's face crumpled. "I just wanted her gone," she sobbed. "I just wanted our life back. Is that so wrong? To want our own home, our own money, our own..." "Yes," Daniel roared, and I jumped. I'd never heard my son raise his voice like that, not once in all his years. "Yes, that's wrong. That's murder, Rebecca. You tried to murder my mother." He set the plate down with shaking hands and pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Rebecca asked, panic flooding her voice. "Calling the police." "No." She lunged for the phone, but Daniel stepped back. "Daniel, please. Think about what this will do to us, to our family, to the kids. You should have thought about that before you put poison in my mother's food." The word poison hung in the air like an accusation that couldn't be taken back. Rebecca saw it too, saw that she'd lost, saw that there was no performance skillful enough to undo what had been revealed. She changed again, and this time the mask didn't just slip, it shattered completely. "Fine," she hissed, her tears drying instantly. "Fine. Yes, I did it. I poisoned the old woman's food. And you know what? I'm not sorry. She's been a burden on us for 2 years. 2 years of catering to her every need while our savings drain away and our lives get smaller and smaller." She turned to me, her face twisted with venom. "You should have just died quietly in that cottage of yours instead of dragging yourself here to leech off your son." I felt the words like slaps, but they didn't hurt the way she intended, because I'd already seen the darkness in her heart. Hearing it spoken aloud was almost a relief. Daniel was staring at his wife like she was speaking a foreign language. "I don't know you," he said softly. "I thought I did, but I don't know you at all." "Oh, grow up," Rebecca snapped. "Everyone has a price, Daniel. Everyone has a breaking point. Your mother reached hers. She just refused to die at it." The police came within 20 minutes. 2 officers, a young woman with kind eyes and an older man with a weathered face that had seen too much. Daniel met them at the door, his voice mechanical as he explained what had happened. I sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket someone had draped over my shoulders, watching the scene unfold like a play I was in but not quite part of. They asked Rebecca questions. She answered with cold precision now, no more tears, no more performances. Just flat, factual responses that made the whole thing sound almost reasonable. "Yes, I put rat poison in her food. Yes, I intended for her to eat it. No, I don't regret it. She was destroying our lives." The female officer looked at me with something like pity. "Ma'am, do you still have the plate? We'll need it as evidence." I nodded toward the kitchen. "It's on the table." My son stopped me before I could eat it. "Actually," Daniel said quietly, "I almost ate it myself." I reached for her fork without thinking. The older officer's expression darkened. "So you not only attempted to murder your mother-in-law, but you nearly killed your own husband in the process?" Rebecca said nothing. What was there to say? The truth was laid out like cards on a table, and every hand showed guilt. They handcuffed her, those silver bracelets clicking shut around her wrists with a sound of finality. As they led her toward the door, she turned back one last time. Not to Daniel, not to apologize, but to look at me. "You won," she said flatly. "Congratulations." "Nobody won," I replied softly. "We all lost something today." And it was true. As I watched them take her away, as I saw my son sink onto the couch with his head in his hands, as I felt the weight of what had almost happened settle over our home like ash after a fire, I knew that even though I'd survived, even though justice was being served, something had been broken that could never quite be repaired. That night, Daniel and I sat together in the quiet house. He held my hand the way he used to when he was a little boy afraid of thunderstorms. "I'm sorry, Ma," he whispered. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you." "You loved her," I said gently. "Love isn't a sin, son, but it can make us blind." "How did you know?" he asked. "How did you know not to eat it?" I smiled, thinking of that moment in the kitchen, of the reflection in the window, of the choice I'd made to stay silent and wait. "Because evil always makes a mistake," I told him. "It always reveals itself in the end. You just have to be patient enough to watch it happen." He nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. And as I sat there holding my son's hand, I thought about Rebecca sitting in a cell somewhere, finally forced to eat the bitter fruit of the seeds she'd planted. I thought about how close I'd come to death, and how close she'd come to serving it to the man she'd promised to love. Evil has poor memory. It forgets where it plants its seeds. But the harvest always remembers. And it always comes home. Thank you for walking this journey with me, dear one. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that truth always finds its way to light, then please subscribe to Grandma Alice Stories. Hit that button, ring that bell, because I have so many more tales to share with you. Stories of betrayal and redemption, of patience and justice, of the lessons life teaches us when we're brave enough to listen. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been hurt, someone who's waiting for their own harvest, someone who needs to know that wickedness never wins in the end. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever witnessed evil turning back on itself? Have you seen karma at work in your own life? I read every word you write, and your stories become part of this beautiful family we're building together. Until next time, my dear, stay wise, stay kind, and remember, what you plant in darkness will always bloom in the light. Now go pour yourself some tea, rest your soul, and know that Grandma Alice will be here waiting with another story soon. God bless you, child. God bless you always.